Browns have 2 first-round picks. They have the one of their own, which is reasonably high right now, and they have the one of the Jaguars that is falling back because the Jaguars are winning. Former Patriots running back Damien Harris, with his thoughts if there is a quarterback in next year's draft that would be willing to give up significant draft capital for.
I think Fernando Mendoza is a phenomenal quarterback, but assessing, diving into the college football world, he's played great this year. I haven't seen enough of him. I haven't seen enough to make me think as an NFL GM that I would spend 2 first-round picks to move up to go get this guy. Great quarterback. He's probably going to win the Heisman, depending on how he fares in the Big Ten Championship. But there's not really a quarterback in college football right now that I would spend high draft capital on.
Well, you got to do something if you're the Browns. If you play the rest of the way.
Is there a veteran name?
If you play the rest of the way and Shedeur Sanders plays like he's played so far, he's not your long-term answer. And Gabriel's proved that he's not. You got to do something.
Well, yeah, but look at all there's a good handful of quarterbacks that have made their careers in the second half. We've seen it from Sam Darnold. Baker Mayfield is another example. Like, we've seen guys, there might just be a veteran guy that comes off of playing well as a backup. Mac Jones is a name that comes to mind. He's played really good backup quarterback for San Francisco.
Quincy, that again, Dante Moore and Mendoza are the 2 guys whose names keep coming up. Would you package first-round picks to ensure you get them? Keep it in mind, you need a left tackle, you need a wide receiver, and you need some offensive linemen. I don't know if you can package them. I guess you have to look, is that quarterback, Mendoza Moore, is he slam dunk for surefire?
I think the question of whether you have to package these picks to get the quarterback is more of a question of how hot the market is for a quarterback, because I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think that so many teams over the last 3 years have drafted quarterbacks, have paid quarterbacks, that there's not going to be that many teams willing to mortgage the future for a quarterback right now. So I don't know if the market gets to that point. And I think that's a good thing for the Browns, that there's not really a lot of situations where teams are going to want to jump the draft order to be able to get their guy because they're that desperate. No, would I trade 2 first-round picks for Dante Moore and Mendoza? Probably not. I think those picks can be better served, and I think there's a high chance that you can get one of those guys without having to trade up your pick. But does that mean you wouldn't consider maybe using a third to secure your spot, or a second to secure your spot if necessary, to do a swap up 1 or 2 spots? Sure, right? Before we get into the would you trade the extra first, we got to ask the question, do you got to? Because if you don't got to, that completely changes the answer there. And I don't think the Browns are going to be in a position where they have to do that. They have the weakest strength of schedule, which is going to give them the tiebreaker over any team that has a similar record to them. Teams are going to win more games than you think in the last month of the season. Most of these teams are going to get to about 3 wins, 4 wins. If the Browns are sitting at 4 wins, they'll be in the top 5. If they're in the top 5, they'll be able to move without having to mortgage the future if they need to move. Or they could possibly just sit there and get the guy where they want it, right? I mean, this has happened before. Yeah, Joe Burrow went number 1 in that draft class, but I think you ended up getting Justin Herbert at like 6, right? Tua went 5th in that class. And I think, there were some guys who went even later. So I think this is a year where you might be able to get somebody without having to mortgage the future. And I think that's the perspective that's important to keep. Would you trade 2 firsts? I just don't think that conversation is necessary right now. But if it came down to it, you felt strongly enough about them to take them in the top 5, you do got to consider it, because you do think that guy could be a franchise quarterback. And, let me ask you this question, Dave. If in 5 years we're talking about one of these guys being like C.J. Stroud, is it going to be ridiculous to say you would trade 2 first-round picks for him? That's really the question that you got to ask yourself, right? It's less about, I don't think this guy's Andrew Luck, I'm not going to give up 3 first-round picks. It's like, what do you think he can turn into? And if that player turns into what you think he could, under your leadership, under your development, under all of this stuff that you have here, would you spend that asset on him in 2-3 years to get him on the team? I mean, Deshaun Watson went for 3 firsts. So that's also another angle of it that you have to think of, right? If he turns into Matt Ryan, I certainly would have traded 2 firsts for Matt Ryan, right? So, you got to consider all angles. I mean, even Jared Goff, would you trade 2 firsts for Jared Goff? Like, I think some people will want to do it. So, I think that's where you have to consider it. You got to keep a long-term view here because you're not talking about a quarterback for a year. You're talking about a quarterback for a very long time.